welcome everybody to the Grueling Truth Super Bowl week. This is, of course, Monday of the Super Bowl week. You probably listen to it on Tuesday, but it's our first show. Wanted to remind everybody we'll have shows all week. Tuesday night, we will have Gary Dunn, former Pittsburgh Steeler defensive lineman. Wednesday, we also had the Pick'em show with myself, Matt, Leon Searcy, and Mark Cooper. Then we'll have a few other shows during the week that we'll talk about probably towards the end of this show. But let's get to what we're doing tonight. First, I'm Mike Goodpasture. I'm your host, and I want to introduce my co-host, Matt Andrews-Gavage.
How's it going tonight, Mike?
All right. You sound a little sad tonight, but you gotta get a little more excited. You must be thinking you must have watched like an old game that the 49ers lost or something. But
no, that probably. I'm just a little tired. I had a long weekend, long day at work. I'm all good.
All right,
I'm awake. I'm ready to do this.
So our topic tonight's a little bit different. It's a Super Bowl topic. We're going to talk about the 10 worst teams to make it to the Super Bowl. Did you have any criteria for this, or did you just use a dartboard like I usually do?
Well, I tried to set a criteria. It was a little hard, just because when you're doing a worst teams, the way your mind ends up working is that these teams are bad. None of these teams are bad because they made the Super Bowl. I mean, even if they weren't great in the regular season, they eventually became at least very good at when they needed to. So none of these teams are bad, and so that makes it a little bit harder when you're talking about the worst because you immediately start thinking this has got to be a bad team. But I guess I looked for, most of the time probably poor quarterback play. It probably is what separates a lot of these teams out. Maybe the defense wasn't all that good. Maybe they just didn't beat a lot of very good teams, and they just kind of snuck in and maybe play good a little bit later. But I'd probably go with quarterback play as maybe my number one. But it wasn't something I was actively thinking about until I started putting the list together, and I kind of realized, wow, a lot of this what has in common is bad quarterback play during the year, or maybe that's what lost them the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, when I did mine, I come out of my 10, I think 2 of them had great quarterbacks. One of them had a good quarterback, or 2 of them had good quarterbacks. The rest were just average guys. But my big thing with them was they were all teams that had a deficiency somewhere. They lacked something.
Yep.
Whether it was a quarterback, a running back, a defense, or maybe their offense wasn't quite as good and they were predominantly a defensive team, which, if you want, I'll go ahead and start this off since I brought that part up at the end because this is a good segue because my number 10 are the 2006 Chicago Bears who lost Super Bowl 41. When you look at them on the surface, they were a 13-3 team, but their schedule that year was very weak. The North Division that they played in the NFC, nobody was above 500 but them. And I think it was just a bunch of things that just kind of came together. The NFC was pretty weak that year. They go to the playoffs. They play a Seattle team that was an all right team. It took overtime to beat them, though. They beat a Saints team that was lacking probably a running game and a defense. That was the year, that was like right around the hurricane year, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the Katrina year. It was Reggie Bush's rookie year, Colston's rookie year.
Yeah,
they were good, but they weren't great.
Let's face it, when it gets down to it, a team that makes the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman as a quarterback is always going to make a top 10 worst teams list to make the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
So my number 10 is Rex Grossman. What's yours?
Well, I had that team much worse. My number 10 is the 1974 Pittsburgh Steelers. I love the Steelers in the 70s. That was a great team, but this team was just starting to get maybe a little bit good. This was probably, of the Super Bowl teams that they went, this was Terry Bradshaw's worst season. Threw more picks and touchdowns. Just not a lot of offense. Franco Harris was probably the only bright spot on the offense, just barely hitting 1,000 yards. The defense was starting to come together, but you go through their schedule, major weak schedule. Almost everybody they played was like, 5-9 or 4-10. A couple of 500 teams there, like your 74 Bengals. But the one good team they played was the 12-2 Raiders. They lost to them big. They did end up beating them in the playoffs, so you can see that they maybe were starting to catch lightning in the bottle that year. I think that was Swan and Stallworth's rookie year.
Yeah.
They were just starting to get good, but this wasn't that great of a team. But it's not nowhere near like the top of the list. But I found about 13 teams, and they just barely made my top 10.
All right. You want to go ahead and go with your number 9?
Sure. The 85 New England Patriots. Like you, I was looking for deficiencies, and Craig James was a decent running back that year, and they did have, that was Andre Tippett's 16.5 sack season. But the quarterback play just really wasn't all that good. Grogan and then Tony Eason, they just lacked a lot. You may be able to find some bright spots on the team, and I know that they were able to beat Miami in the AFC Championship game. But when you go through kind of just what they were that year, they really weren't much better than an average team.
Yeah.
But again, they're lower on the list for me.
Yeah, my number 9. All right, and actually I've got that team significantly higher on my list.
Sure.
My number 9 is the 1992 Buffalo Bills. They were 11-5 that year, but if you look at them, they had the top rushing offense, third-ranked scoring offense, but the defense was average.
Yeah.
When it came to points allowed, they generally got the job done. But they had the biggest comeback in NFL history, where they're down 35-3 with their backup quarterback, who came in and won the game. And I think the Bills' first 2 teams went to the Super Bowl were actually very good teams. I just don't think this team defensively was as good. And let's face it, when they played the Cowboys, they completely imploded.
Yeah.
The AFC was pretty weak back then. And they beat, I think, Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, Miami in Miami, blew them both out, but I don't think anybody's going to say either one of those were great football teams by any measure. And they just got buried in the Super Bowl 15-17. So they are my number 9 on my list of worst teams to make.
They made my number 14.
Your number 14?
Yeah, I had about 13 or 14 teams, and they were. I was thinking about the last couple of years of the Bills. Like you said, the first 2 years, I think those were their strongest teams. Their last 2 years were, they were starting to decline a little bit.
And we'll go ahead and go to my number 8 are the Arizona Cardinals. In the Super Bowl 43 Cardinals, 2008, 9-7 team. A lot of that 9-0 record was against a really weak NFC West, where they went 6-0. Had a very good offense. The rest of the Cardinals division that year when it combined 13-35. So that's 6 or 9 wins came against that. They beat just 2 teams in regular season that finished with a winning record. They were a suspect defense. They finished with a 0.1 point differential in the entire regular season.
Yeah, that's pretty slim.
Yeah. Then they caught a little bit of a break because they get to play a rookie quarterback in Matt Ryan in the first round against Atlanta. And then, of course, they got plenty of help from Carolina's quarterback, Jake Delhomme, who tossed 5 interceptions at home in a divisional matchup. And then they basically won the NFC Championship over the number 6 seed by a late touchdown on Kurt Warner, despite the Eagles outgaining him 454 to 369 yards. That being said, they probably should have won the Super Bowl, but they lost probably one of the greatest Super Bowls ever played by, I think, 27-23.
That really was a great Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I hated to put them there because you got Fitzgerald and Warner, but just when you look at it and the fact that, their division was 13-35 and 6 of their 9 wins came from it, I think you have to have them in there somewhere.
Yeah, I can understand that because They didn't have that good of a season. And that's really the case with a couple of the teams that I have on my list. A couple of these teams just, they really weren't all that good in the regular season, but they just caught fire. Maybe got a couple of breaks or got to play a weaker team, and they ended up going to the Super Bowl. But I mean, they did have one of the best runs I'd ever seen. Just Larry Fitzgerald alone, what he did in the playoffs was crazy.
Yeah, they were definitely better, and I think that's the year they got totally demolished by New England too in the snow down there, where it looked like they actually gave
I remember that.
And everybody really thought that they were probably pretty much done when it looked like they gave up there.
Right. Yeah, I think everybody thought they were going to go away.
Right.
That just didn't happen.
Number 8.
My number 8 was the 2005 Pittsburgh Steelers. Another kind of a similar situation. I liked the Arizona offense a little bit more than otherwise I probably would have put Arizona in there. This Pittsburgh team was okay. It was an okay team. It's kind of a very similar situation. I thought the Bengals were the better team. I'm pretty sure you do too. If Carson Palmer doesn't go down, maybe that game's totally different. I think they should have lost the Colts game. That Colts team, that was probably Manning's strongest team of the decade, the 05 Colts. And, they found a way to win. Maybe it was more Peyton Manning found a way to lose. But, and then the Broncos, I don't know, that may have been one of the weakest 14-win seasons I've ever seen. And then in the Super Bowl, it was just one of the lousiest Super Bowls I've ever watched, probably the lousiest, maybe other than 1970. But it just really wasn't that great of a team. Willie Parker was an all right running back. I don't think he was particularly great. Bettis was still there, but he was at the end. I just don't think they really had a lot. But again, like we said, none of these teams are bad teams. But when you start comparing all the other Super Bowl teams, I think this one slides down there pretty good.
All right, you want to go to number 7?
All right, my number 7 is the 1996 New England Patriots. The offense was pretty good. Bledsoe might have been one of his better seasons. But the thing with the Patriots was, they didn't have to play Denver in the playoffs. It was really not that bad of a playoff run.
But I'll make this claim. I think the Jaguars were better than them.
Yeah, the Jaguars, they're at least comparable.
Off the top, I had a conversation. I was talking to Leon Searcy, who played for the Jaguars. This was either last night or the night before, and he actually brought that game up, how it still bothered him, because they got the ball inside the 25 times, had to settle for 2 field goals, missed a field goal, and then Mark Brunell threw 2 interceptions in the end zone.
Right.
So I definitely agree on that one, but I actually have them even higher up than that.
Sure. I just don't think the defense was all that good. The only thing that really got them anywhere was having Parcells behind them. I think that definitely gave them an advantage over a lot of teams. But you look at them, and they just were largely an average team. The Jaguars were not very good that year, but they had quite a run, able to get to the AFC Championship, especially beating Denver. But I think if Denver had not boxed everything up so soon, and they just kind of laid down for such a long time, they were quite rusty, they really should have went to the Super Bowl that year.
Yeah, I think it was the year to start off like 13-0. First loss was to the Giants.
Yeah, it was. Well, that was the '98 season.
Okay, that's right.
They were I want to say they were 11-1 or something like that. They clinched the division, and the only good, then they played the Packers that year, which I think a lot of people thought that was going to be a Super Bowl preview. But they played with Bill Musgrave. They did everything boxed up. I think Shannon Sharp was on the bench. I didn't have anything really to play for. They lost that game 41-6. But they were really just sleepwalking until the playoffs, and I think that really hurt them.
All right. Well, my number 7, are actually one of my favorite teams outside of my own, which would have been the 1986 Denver Broncos. Started the season off 6-0, finished 5-5 to go 11-5. The problem for the Broncos offense was that it only generated 27 more yards on the ground than their defense gave up. They beat New England in the first round 22-17. Then, of course, you had to drive. Unfortunately, the game ended in a massacre against the Super Bowl 21 against the Giants. The Broncos managed only 52 yards rushing. Elway gets sacked 4 times. They lose 39-20 in a game that wasn't as close as the score indicated. So, to me, I've got them there just because there was really no run game. They were a little light up front. They had a hard time doing anything on defense also against better teams. And let's face it, the AFC didn't have a lot of competition at that time.
Yeah, overall. That particular year, that was an interesting season because I think your Bengals were even in that mix where you had like a 4-way tie at 10-6.
Yeah, a loss the first game of the season against the Chiefs is what kept the Bengals from making the playoff. Because the thing that was bad was the Bengals last game of the season beat the Jets 52-20, but the Jets made the playoffs because of that 3 or 4 team tiebreaker. Where I think all those teams had played each other, and the Jets and the Chiefs had the best record in the 4-way playoff, I guess you call it. Bengals would have won the Super Bowl that year, but what the hell. I'll go ahead to my number 6. Well, they'd have lost in the Super Bowl. But my number 6 is the 87 Broncos team, who lost 42-10. They took full advantage of a strike-shortened season, not to mention 3 games. I mean, you had 3 games played for replacement players. I think they won all 3. They won the AFC West with a 10-4-1 record. Elway had one of the most productive offenses in the league again. They got another miracle, just like the year before where you get a fumble. I think was Ernest Byard fumbled the ball going into the end zone.
Yeah.
Get them to win. They jump out to a 10-0 lead in the first quarter, only to watch the Redskins storm back with 35 points in the second quarter. I think Washington finished with a Super Bowl record 602 total yards, including 280 yards rushing. So you can see Denver didn't really fix their run defense from the 1986 season. And this is the thing. Denver was outgained by its opponents in all 3 of its playoff games. So, I mean, when you see that, you figure maybe the end result against Washington wasn't all that surprising. But that's my number 6. Yeah, both the 86 and 87 Broncos, if I were to go to top 20, I think they definitely make it for me. I think they were just bad defensive teams, Matt.
Bad defensive teams?
Yeah, they were just bad defensive teams. They couldn't stop the run.
Yeah, I definitely can understand that.
I mean, in '86 they gave up more rushing yards allowed than any team in football. In 1987, they gave up 280 yards in one Super Bowl game against a guy that never played another game in the NFL. I don't think.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Timmy Smith.
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty fluky, but.
Yeah, the run defense was terrible. It's fluky until you look at all the other guys that put up 100 or 200 yards on them in the previous 2 years. Yeah.
It's funny because I thought Elway was actually really good, especially in '87. And
he was. He had to be. It's the only way they won.
Yeah, I thought their offense was a lot more balanced, and I didn't think their defense was bad enough for me to raise them up further, but I can certainly understand where you're, why you're
the rushing offense was not very good either. Name me the running backs on those teams again.
Well, it's probably Sammy
Winder, Gerald Wilhoit.
Yeah, and then Steve Sewell's probably there.
Yeah, so you had a bunch of average running backs.
Great. Right, yeah. That's where they pretty much always had that.
Where are we at? Your number 6?
My number 6, the 1970 Dallas Cowboys. Again, largely my criteria probably has more to do with quarterback play than anything. I thought this was not a good year. Craig Morton was pretty bad. They did run the ball relatively well, but again, I think they benefited from, it wasn't the strongest. This was the first year of the NFC. It wasn't like a really, really strong conference. Defense was good, but, when you get to the Super Bowl, their playoff run really wasn't all that impressive, and it was one of the lousiest Super Bowls ever. I just got a hard time believing this. You put this team up against a lot of the Super Bowl teams, with Craig Morton back there. I just can't see a lot getting done. Whereas I could see John Elway finding a way to beat this team.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of aging superstars.
But the problem was the 86-87 Broncos wouldn't have been able to stop their running game, probably.
Yeah, maybe not. But, they had a lot of the Cowboys had a lot of aging guys. I think Herb Adderley was there, but he was old. Mike Ditka was old. I mean, Lance Allworth might have even been on that team. And to me, this was a declining. This was like the end of the 60s Tom Landry teams, and then they kind of got new blood when Roger Staubach came in the year after.
All right. Well, that one just missed it for me. I agree almost everything you said, though. I understand all that. So what's your number 5?
My number 5, New York fans are not going to like this, but the 1968 Jets. I've gone up and down this team.
One.
What?
I don't understand that one.
No?
Great running game, very good defense.
I don't think the great running game was great. Snell was decent.
Good.
Snell was decent. They have two redeeming qualities about this team. They had two good wide receivers, George Sauer and Don Maynard, and the defense was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. Yeah, and they did have in the AFL, they did have a good offense. I just don't think Joe Namath was that good. And again, I think I'm largely judging this based on quarterback play. I just don't think Joe Namath was all that good. I wanted to put them even higher, but I also wanted to give credit and at least take the era into account. The AFL was they're starting to really encourage a lot of passing.
Basically. Made it hard to have a high completion percentage.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of air raid offense. You got a lot of wide receivers. You're just throwing the ball all over the place, spreading the defense out, and to me, Joe Namath was just not a very good quarterback, and I think the only reason they did win the Super Bowl was I think it was just psychological. It was just a bad coaching job by Don Shula. But there were aspects of this team that was good, but I just can't see this team beating almost any of the Super Bowl teams. Yeah,
but I'll tell you this. There's no aspect on that team that I would consider a weakness, even the quarterback. Rex Grossman is a weakness at quarterback in a Super Bowl.
Yes, that's why I have that team higher.
Played a good game in that Super Bowl.
Yeah,
now,
he did.
I think Schnell or Randy Beverly should have been the MVP of the game, but I mean, he played solid. So I
just don't think Snell was all that great. They ran like 600 yards. It's all right.
Well, you're a hard man.
I don't think it was anything special.
And I'll tell you this also. I think Weeb Eubank is probably a better
He was a good coach.
Than about anybody else you got in your top 10 whoever their coach was. But so I guess we move to my number 5, which would be the 2003 Carolina Panthers. They mastered the art of winning the close games, had an 11-5 record. But the thing about it is they only won 2 games in the regular season by more than 6 points. 7 of their victories were 3 points or fewer. The team's point differential was plus 21 or 1.3 a game. Their ground game only produced 9 touchdowns. Quarterback Jake Delhomme had 19 touchdowns to 16 interceptions. They played in one of the great divisional playoff games ever when they had the double overtime victory against St. Louis.
Yep.
But see, the thing is this: they're done in divisional playoff, and this thing people forget. People always tell me how bad how bad of a coach Mike Martz was because he did not give the ball to Marshall Faulkner in the Rams' second Super Bowl appearance. Mm-hmm. My big indictment on Mike Martz was him opting to hold the ball for a game-tying field goal, even though the Rams were inside the 20 with a little bit less than a minute left and still had one timeout left.
He never went for the kill. Well, he just wasn't that kind of a make that 0-1 Super Bowl really shock him.
Yeah, which is surprising because he wanted to throw the ball on every play.
Right.
NFC title game against Philadelphia. Don McNabb was injured, and they picked him off 4 times, won 14-3. Then they played and one of the great Super Bowls ever, came back and won it. But I don't see this as being anywhere near a great football team.
Yeah, to me, Jake Delhomme was I thought they were. I did consider them. I thought Jake Delhomme gave better quarterback play than the teams that I have listed here on my.
Okay, so wait a second. You're telling me the 03 Panthers were a more complete team than the 68 Jets?
Yeah, I thought the defense was pretty good.
Both teams had pretty good defenses.
Yeah.
I would make
I thought Jake Delhomme was actually solid that year. I don't think he was all that bad.
So was Joe Namath.
Joe Namath was
actually not. Jake Delhomme's numbers are very reminiscent of a quarterback in the NFL in the 60s. 19 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. He might have got MVP.
Yeah, I can understand it. I mean, they definitely rank. They're there.
But, well, we are up to our top 4 teams in history, but before we get to that, let's check out a word from one of our sponsors, Gridiron Mo. We'll be back after this.
This is former All-Pro Leon Searcy. I've got a new interactive app called Gridiron Mo, where you get to call the plays, offense or defense, and a live NFL game. You get to interact with other fans, pick the play, pick the call. That's Gridiron Mo.
All right, you're back on the Grueling Cruise. Super Bowl week. This is show number 1 for the week. We're doing the 10 worst teams to qualify for the Super Bowl. We are up to number 4, and I have the 1996 New England Patriots, which was a team that basically just had Bill Parcells. I believe you brought this one up earlier too, didn't you, Matt? Didn't you have it like number 8?
Yeah, I had it at number 7.
Now, this is the thing. Drew Bledsoe had a heck of a year, threw for more 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, but the defense on this team allowed over 4,000 yards through the air as well. They were a stout defense against the run, but their pass defense was not very good. And like you said, they caught a major break with Jacksonville upsetting Denver, and then they caught a major break by Jacksonville inside the 20, not being able to put the ball in the end zone. They go to the Super Bowl. Basically, Desmond Howard beat them out. They were actually in that game most of the way. So once again, as we said, these aren't really bad teams, but I just don't think they were. I don't think they were a great team by any imagination. And their one huge weakness was they could not stop the pass very well. I mean, when you're giving up more than 4,000 yards in a year, you get a little bit of a pass defense problem. So my number 4 is the 1996 New England Patriots. What's your 4?
My 4 is the 1987 Washington Redskins. Again, quarterback play here. Most of the year, Doug Williams was below average. I think he threw more picks and touchdowns. Not very much at all.
Was Jay Schrader the starting quarterback most of that year?
They alternated. You know, Schrader was there, Williams was there. I mean, they were. You know, George Rogers was the running back for a little while, and and Timmy Smith out of nowhere. You know, the defense was decent. It wasn't great. You know, the one bright spot on the offense was probably Gary Clark, and then Ricky Sanders and Art Monk. They were good, and Clark had a decent year. I don't know. To me, it was just really sporadic quarterback play. I don't think this was a great team. I think this was a team that played one really magnificent quarter and ended up winning a Super Bowl. Even the playoff games. I mean, they're a Darren Nelson drop away from not even making it to the Super Bowl. They played the 87 Bears, I think, in the divisional round. They were near the end of their rope. Walter Payton's last game, and they were in so much transition at quarterback. They had like 4 or 5 different starting quarterbacks that year. Just not a very impressive team. And I think Denver was better than them, but I think it was just one of those days. I didn't think.
Well, and the thing is this: you talked about the Minnesota game and a drop pass. If he catches that ball, we probably got Minnesota in this top 10.
Yeah, you're right, because they were 8-7 that year.
Yeah,
they just had,
and I think they probably would have beat Denver in the Super Bowl too, because that '87 Viking team was a good team. They were the opposite of the Broncos, whereas their record was just 8-7 because of the strike. Because I think they lost all 3 of their strike games.
Yeah.
So they were actually a team that was 8-4, but they had the 0-3 strike, which made them 8-7. Where the Broncos were a team that wasn't near as good as they looked because of the 3 wins. I think they were really only 7-4 when they were playing with the regular players.
So they're about the same. And,
I think Minnesota.
But I would agree. I would put Minnesota above them.
Minnesota
would have beat them.
Minnesota had a much better defense. I think Jerry.
Yeah,
Burns,
Dolman and Joey Browner.
And I think Jerry Burns is an underrated coach.
Not a lot of people remember him.
I remember Jerry Burns. He always looked like he looked like Burgess Meredith from the Rocky movies. But what are we at? Your number 3?
My number 3, the 2000 Giants. This was a team that I don't know how they got to the Super Bowl, really. I mean, they just played a Viking team that was just not very well coached.
They played a Viking team that looked like they just quit. It's before the game.
Yeah, they just had talent, but boy, they just didn't look like they even made the plane ride. Just remember all the shots of Culpepper and Moss in the rain, just kind of sitting there during it was like a 41-0 game. But as far as the Giants go, not a lot of offense. He basically had, Tiki Barber just squeaked over 1,000 yards. He did have 70 receptions, so he was good. He was a good weapon out of the backfield. Amani Toomer was their main weapon, and after that, they maybe had Ike Hilliard. Just wasn't a lot there. Defensively, I think they were like 15th in the league in offense. Just not much at all on offense. Defensively, they were good, but again, to me, the tiebreaker over teams like that with deficiencies is quarterback play. And I wouldn't trust Kerry Collins in a big game. No way. I just don't think he was that good of a quarterback. And, the Ravens just absolutely dismantled them. But I just don't think this was that good of a team. I think the NFC was down that year.
The NFC Championship game in '96, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. That was another team.
I don't think Kerry Collins was that bad. He's no better than he wasn't that bad, if you know what I mean.
He was okay. He was an okay quarterback.
He was Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't know. Fitzpatrick's better than him, I think, even. But.
I think I'd rather have Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick
but either
can
way,
deliver the deep ball.
Fitzpatrick has a tendency to play really well during most of the season, and in one game you really need to win, he doesn't play very well.
Yeah, and if Kerry Collins is just, in no way was he ever a big game quarterback. I mean, I'd rather have Jeff Garcia in a big game than
I thought Jeff Garcia was
like Kerry
Collins.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just throwing out names out there that most people wouldn't think of as a good quarterback. I'd rather have Jake Delhomme in 2003 than Kerry Collins.
Oh, you can't just say in a specific year.
Just saying.
You might have been stretching it with
Jake Delhomme was okay. He was decent. Kerry Collins
2003. Oh, he's pretty good in 04 and 05. I think he had an arm problem or something.
Yeah, I actually thought Delhomme was all right.
Yeah.
I still wouldn't really trust him in a big spot, but I trust him more than Collins.
All right, let's move on. My number 3 is a team is near and dear to your heart because they almost upset your team. That would be the 1994 San Diego Chargers. lost.
I almost put this team in my 10.
Who lost them at 49ers 49-26. Actually, they only lost one game all year by more than 7 points in the regular season. You know which game that was, Matt?
Say that again? They lost what?
They only lost one game by more than 7 points all year.
Yeah, I do know that. That would be the 38-15 drubbing in week 15.
Yeah. And the thing is this, they were a team that they didn't really have a huge weakness other than Stan Humphries, kind of like Jake Delhomme. I mean, just a good quarterback. He's just a guy.
Yeah.
And their point differential was plus 75, which is an average of winning by less than 5 points. Their ground game was not very good. They averaged less than 4 yards per carry. Had a good playoff run. They're down 21-6 at halftime to Miami. Come back, win 22-21 because San Diego misses a 48-yard field goal that would have won the game. Had another great comeback against Pittsburgh where they were down 13-3. Came back to win it, I think, 17-13. Had a goal line stand at the end. But they were outgained 415-226 and had the ball less than 23 minutes. So I hate to take any credit away from a team, but it's kind of, and then of course we got Super Bowl 29, which
it was Super Bowl, but only unless you're a Niner fan.
It was 14-7 late in the first quarter, though.
Yeah, they had the really good drive, the 33 catch and run by Ronnie Harmon, and then Natron Means over the top.
Yeah, the only problem was by the time there was 5 minutes left in the third quarter, it was 42-10. So
yes,
that's definitely.
They woke up the Niners a little bit.
I don't think they woke them up. I just think that they weren't very good, so they got their butts kicked. My number 2 are the New York Giants from 2000, as you said. Jim Fossil was the head coach, and Kerry Collins was the quarterback. So right there, it makes it maybe the biggest miracle team to ever make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they had a very good defense, but offensively, not that great. I mean, defensively, they held opponents to 15.4 points a game, less than 70. I think it was less than 73 yards rushing a game. I mean, the NFC was not that great at that point.
Yeah, it was a down year, definitely for the NFC.
Yeah, the problem for the Giants, though, was their offense. And that was especially the case, Super Bowl 35 against that great Ravens defense. Baltimore's defense is considered one of the best in the history of the game. The Giants didn't really score a point. Their only points came in the game on a 97-yard kickoff return for a touchdown by Ron Dixon, I think in the second or third quarter.
Immediately followed by Jermaine Lewis.
Yeah, and then the Giants' offense mustered a total of 152 yards. And quarterback Kerry Collins was responsible for 4 INTs. And the Giants turned the ball over 5 times. This is a team that their deficiency is their quarterback, their head coach, and their offense. So it's a miracle they went to the Super Bowl. But
it is.
What's your number 2?
My number 2 is the 2006 Bears. I just thought their glaring weakness was quarterback. There was a time where I thought Rex Grossman had a little bit of talent. I thought he, given the right scenario and in the right offense, he could have been a decent quarterback. I thought the Bears were just a really bad fit for him, under Lovie Smith. And, it's just, he showed flashes at times in his Bear career, but his hands were small. He would drop the ball. Especially, I think he did that in the rain in the Super Bowl that year. And he had a little bit of Favre in him. He'd make a great throw and then he'd come back and throw 2 picks. And to me, I liked their ground game. I thought Thomas Jones and Cedric Benson were good running backs that year. The defense, I think they were like 3rd or 4th in the league. They had a lot of luck that year. But also they had Devin Hester. That was quite a weapon. But when it came down to quarterback play, I just don't see how you could trust a guy like Rex Grossman to ever win you a big game. They won a lot of games because of their defense. I remember
and Devin Hester.
The 2000. And Devin Hester, exactly. The Cardinal game where they're down like 21-3, defense scores twice and Hester returns a touchdown. Grossman had one of the worst games ever.
Like 0 rating. They are who we thought they are.
Yeah, exactly. That was the same game. You look at that team. To me, had a lot of glaring weaknesses on offense, but I shouldn't say a lot of glaring weakness. They had one really glaring weakness that would affect the rest of the team. And Lovie Smith was a good coach. I wouldn't call him a great coach. I think he was a much better coordinator than he was a coach. So I look at this team. I don't see them beating a lot of these Super Bowl teams.
Well, I'll go ahead and give my number one first, just because I know you've already given this team, so maybe you'll give something different than what I've got on my top 10 altogether and give us a different perspective at the end. But my number one is the 1985 New England Patriots, who lost 46-10 to Chicago in Super Bowl 20. They were an 11-5 team that are in a wild card berth, got hot at the right time. They actually won 8 out of 9, I think, towards the end of the season, rode their defense into the playoffs, forced 16 turnovers in its 3 postseason victories, including 6 against Miami in the AFC Championship game. Basically, it was an opportunistic defense, not a great defense, but an opportunistic defense that carried an inconsistent offense all season long, at least until the Super Bowl when things went tragically bad for them. They actually had to lead 3-0. Chicago scored 44 points in a row. And then they made the 2000 Ravens look like an offensive juggernaut because the Patriots managed 123 yards on offense, including just 7 yards rushing. They turned the ball over 6 times and gave up 7 sacks. Probably the worst offensive performance in Super Bowl history. If it's not the 1977 Broncos are breathing down their necks for that, or the 2000 Ravens team. I still think all opportunity to do anything was taken away by the Tony Eason at quarterback instead of Steve Grogan. I think Steve Grogan was a very good quarterback. He played very well for them during the season, especially at the end there. I think he had something to do with 1 or 2 of them playoff wins also. And Raymond Berry, I don't think, was anywhere near a great coach. Great player for sure. But, I mean, how many guys can you name off the top of your head that were actually great players that won a Super Bowl as a coach? Mike Dick is the only one I can think of.
Right. And he was, largely, I think most people would agree that he was a good coach, not a great coach unless you're in Chicago.
Yeah.
Obviously, for what you just said, he might be the only one that I could think of that was
Tom Landry
Hall of Fame player.
Tom Landry was a really good player, and he was definitely a great coach.
That's true. Tom Landry counts.
Yeah, so, I mean, Landry is about as good as he gets there. Chuck Noll was an all-right player, but most of these guys were just average players at best, or journeymen, or special teams guys. So my number one is that team. I actually really liked that team that year. And then Garen Barris, Julius Adams on the defensive line, Andre Tippett, who was basically Lawrence Taylor in a smaller city that didn't get as much of attention. And he didn't really bring attention on himself either. You had Irving Fryer was a good wide receiver when he wasn't getting in a little bit of trouble here or there.
Stanley Morgan was good.
Yeah, Stanley Morgan was good. Craig James was all right, mostly Tutupu at fullback.
Who's their tight end that year? Did they even run a tight end?
Lynn Dawson.
Oh, boy.
Lin Dawson. He's the one that dropped
Lynn Dawson,
a touchdown pass at the start of that game that would have made it 7-0 instead of 3.
Yeah, that's right. He kind of dove for it, and that's just out of his reach.
Yeah. And now John Hanna was on that team. Was John Hanna on that team?
Oof. Boy.
I think he was.
John Hanna wasn't he largely late 70s, early 80s? Is he still there?
I thought so, but I'm not sure. Maybe he wasn't. I hope he was, so he got to play in a Super Bowl, though. And if he didn't, well,
right,
he did.
Certainly deserved.
Yeah, probably the greatest guard to ever play football.
It may be, yeah, for sure.
Sounds like another show we can do at some point.
Yep.
The 10 greatest guards. You think anybody will listen to that other than guards and their families?
Hard to say on that one. Maybe Leon and Mark can would listen to it and tell all their friends.
Mark would. Mark was a guard, I think. Leon was a tackle. So
right.
Leon
Right.
can't listen. We'll have Mark on the show. He could break down all the guards in NFL history.
There you go.
Bet Mark would enjoy that. Not really. What's your number one?
My number one is the 1982 Miami Dolphins. To me, you go up and down this team, I don't see how you can find a worse.
I can't believe I forgot that
team.
team, and that's the team that only got there because Don Shula cheated.
Exactly.
If that field is not left uncovered and not a monsoon and not 6 inches of mud.
That was the year of the snowplow game. And I mean, here's the thing: you got David Woodley at quarterback, who's now I realize this is a strike season, so I'm not looking.
I think
for
in that Super Bowl he was like 4 for 15, also, wasn't he?
That's the thing. He threw 5 touchdowns that year and like 8 picks, but his percentage was bad. And Don Struck, good quarterback. Obviously, we all remember him.
Well,
from
one of the
greatest
great backup
game
quarterbacks of all time. He was like Frank Reich.
Backup.
He was really good at going in and saving a game, but not so good at starting it.
Exactly. We all remember him from our favorite game, the '81 Chargers Dolphins playoff game. But like you said, he's a career backup. You don't want the moment you start Don Struck to get him going. You think the magic that you saw in the second half of the game that he came back and won is going to carry over to him starting. It just never worked. But
and their defense was by no means great. It was just solid.
No, it was.
And I'll make this
defense.
statement: I think the Jets were the best team in football in '82.
That was my point. That's what I wanted to really go with. The '82 Jets, I think, really belonged in the Super Bowl that year. I think that would have been.
If you look at it, I mean, the Jets, Raiders, and Bengals were probably all three better than Miami. It would have hammered Miami on a
all
good
three of them were. I mean, weren't the Raiders like 8-1?
Raiders were 8-1. Their only loss was to the Bengals. The Bengals were 7-2, and the Jets
were 7-2. Yep.
Yeah, and the Jets beat Cincinnati, and they beat Oakland, and they beat them both on the road. And then they go into Miami, and that was Don Shula's best coaching move, I think, of his career, was to leave that field uncovered.
Right. So that was the monsoon game, right?
Yeah. 14-0. I think A.J. Dewey picked off 3 passes.
Right.
And Freeman.
So I look at that team, and boy, I cannot think of a worse team. And
I think didn't Dewey return 2 of those for touchdowns? That was the 14 points.
You might be right on that. Those might have been defensive touchdowns.
So if you look at it, they didn't really score an offensive touchdown in that game. And in the Super Bowl, Fulton Walker is what made that game close.
Yeah.
He has the 88 or 91-yard kickoff return?
I think it might have been like 98. I think Desmond Howard broke the record in 96.
Yeah, it was 98.
And
Stanford Jennings was 92, and then Desmond.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Fulton Walker was the kind of the offense for a while there, and I wanted to put that 82 Redskin team somewhere near here, but
it's hard to do just because of 83.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like they were a one-hit wonder.
They're largely similar to the 83 team. You still had good quarterback play out of Theismann, and you had John Riggins there, and Mosley was the MVP of the league. So I couldn't.
If you look at it, most of our teams in the top 10, there was no follow-up year where they were really good.
That's the thing. I mean, other than the 75 Steelers.
Yeah, even that Dolphins team. In '83, they had a really good season with Dan Marino, but they still flamed out and got beat in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's almost a different team altogether because wasn't Clayton wasn't that his rookie year in '83?
I think.
Or maybe he was a rookie in '84. I mean, to me, the team was drastically changing.
I know Clayton Dupper were there by '84, but they weren't there in '82. I remember in '82, the guy that made a big play in the Super Bowl was Jimmy Cephalo.
Wow.
He got there one play. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember.
Nat Moore was there.
Nat Moore was there. Maybe Duriel Harris.
Tony Nathan, maybe.
Their main running back was Andre Franklin, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. That year was Andre Franklin. By '84 it was Tony Nathan, and I want to say Oh, man. I want to say Woodley, but I don't know if that's right. But to me, by the time you get to 83, especially 84, it's almost like two different teams. It didn't seem like the same
it'll tell you
team
one thing: when your quarterback takes you to a Super Bowl, and then the next year he's gone.
Right.
And I mean, he's
like
in Pittsburgh right after that.
Right.
And I enjoyed that as
Yeah.
a Bengals fan because he got to start against us once or twice, and we beat the hell out of him.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'll admit, I think there was at least one team that you mentioned that I forgot about.
Yeah, there was
like,
me too.
oh,
The
man.
82 Dolphins.
Yeah,
I forgot about the 82.
To me, I went through them as best I could, and I just looked at. Once I saw a quarterback play, and I was just trying to remember this team, and I didn't, like you said, didn't have much of a playoff run, and I thought that Super Bowl was one of the worst.
Yeah, you look at 82, their first-round playoff win, I believe they handled the Patriots pretty good. Then they came back, you had to rematch, where they actually blew the Chargers out 34-13.
Yeah.
Which was impressive. But then after that, I mean, to only put up 10 points over the next 8 quarters, hard to be considered anywhere near a great team. I mean,
right.
they were a solid team that had a decent defense. But, I mean, I still don't know how to get to the Super Bowl that year.
No, me neither. Only a strike season, I think, could put that team in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, because on a dry field, I think the Bengals, Raiders, and Jets all beat them by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Definitely.
That year
I thought all three of those teams
with
were
the
better.
Bengals, because we beat the Jets 17-14, had the ball inside the 20, then Anderson throws the interception to Ray, who he brings it back like 102 yards.
Wasn't
then
that,
I think he did it again.
Didn't the Jets get in the 40s in that game?
Yeah, it was 42-17. But that was a game that the Bengals led 17-14, had it inside the 20, I believe it was, and Darryl Gray picked off an Anderson pass, ran it back for a touchdown, and I think he might have had 2 in that game, pick sixes.
Jeez, and that was the Freeman McNeil game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like 200-some yards.
Yeah, he always killed us. It didn't matter. You could put Freeman McNeil in a game right now, and he'd kill us. Freeman McNeil and Earl
great
Campbell.
Running back, but he was pretty good.
Yeah, he didn't last long.
No.
But so we talked about our Super Bowl week tomorrow night. Our guest will be Gary Dunn, integral part
That'll be good.
of Steelers defensive line. Super Bowls 13 and 14. He's friends with Mark Cooper, but we won't hold that against him. And then tomorrow night, of course, we'll have our Super Bowl 50 Pick'em show with myself, Matt Andrew Scavage, Leon Searcy, and the aforementioned Mark Cooper, who played with the Broncos in Super Bowl 21. He was starting guard. We may have a surprise guest also, so make sure you check out the Grueling Truth Facebook page tomorrow during the day. If it comes off, it will be a big one. Not sure yet. Leon's working on it right now. Wednesday night, I will be back with Matt and Joe Rodriguez. And what was our topic for that show?
I want to say top 10 best Super Bowls.
No, that's Thursday night.
That's Thursday. Okay, then I can't remember.
And
what
you
got
to remember because remember I had a good idea, and then you said that'd be a good show. Well, you'll just have to check out.
I remember we talked about 10 players that should have been the MVP, and then I think we struggled to find 10.
Yeah, so we came up with something else. I gave you another idea last night you liked. What was that?
Oh, man. My mind is drawing a blank.
Huh. All right.
I think you're just going to have to tell me, unless you can't remember either.
I can't remember. I would have already said it. And then Thursday night, we'll have the top 10 Super Bowls in NFL history, which should be an interesting show. If we'd have done it 15 years ago, we'd have had a hard time finding 10. But doing it now, it's going to be hard to narrow it down to 10, I think. Yeah,
that's true. The Super Bowl really has gotten a lot better in the last 10, 12 years. The games are closer. There's a lot more. There just seems to have been a lot more really crazy moments. Just a lot of really great games going back to probably 04, 03.
Well, even farther than that. Because 31, the Patriots win. That was a heck of a game.
Yeah, 99. That was a good one.
Super Bowl 32 was a great game. Super Bowl 30 was a really good game.
Mm-hmm.
31 was all right until the Patriots lost and Brett Favre got to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's the thing. As bad as the Patriots were, as average as that team probably was, they still had a reasonable chance to win that game until that kickoff return by Desmond Howard, because they had just cut the lead to 6 points. That whole second half, they looked like all the momentum. They had the long run by Curtis Martin right over Gilbert Brown, and Favre wasn't really doing much, and Desmond Howard bailed them out again.
But so everybody check us out on Spreaker. When you go to Spreaker to check us out, make sure you follow us so you get all updates on our shows. Like I said, the Grilling Truth Facebook page. We will also Friday night have the RealBengals.com or RealBengalsFans.com Trivia Championship between Candace Gray and Scott Wilson. So make sure you check that out. That show will actually air 11 o'clock Eastern Time Friday night on Blog Talk Radio. It'll be live. The link will be posted a day or two beforehand if you want to listen to that. Make sure you check out all our sponsors, Gridiron Mode, www.gridironmode.com, SteelbergBox.com, www.steelbergbox.com. Also go check out www.realbengalsfans.com. So any final words, Matt?
Well, I'm hoping that we don't end up putting one of these two teams in the top 10. I'm hoping this is one of the best Super Bowls that we've ever seen. I really hope this is not like 2013.
I enjoyed 2013, because I was cheering for Seattle.
Well, that's true. You're not a big Peyton Manning fan. I can understand
I don't like
that.
Peyton Manning. I would take it at a 43-8 because I really enjoyed that Super Bowl in 2013.
I'm okay either way with whatever happens. Cam Newton's a very good quarterback. That would be really big. I think the Panthers could end up being very good for a long time if they end up pulling this off. Sometimes success has a way of breeding more success.
Well, it also has many times gone the other way too, though.
Exactly. If they, that's true. Maybe they lose everybody and they don't get back there for a while, but Cam Newton could end up really becoming a great quarterback if they pull this off.
All righty. Well, I guess this show is done, so make sure you check us out over the next few days. We'll have a lot of shows going on there. Once again, the Grilling Truth Facebook page. Make sure you go follow it. Check out our sponsors. So, for Matt Andrews Gabbage, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grilling Truth, where the legends speak.